If you've seen some of my other videos, you know that I don't think martial arts training is the most effective route if your goal is self-defense. There are more efficient ways to build those skills. That being said, people always want to know, if you do martial arts, have you ever had to use it to defend yourself? And I actually have, and I've heard many of stories from students which they've also had to use their martial arts training for self-defense. So while I don't think it's the most efficient route to achieving that goal, it certainly can be useful. So I'll go over some of those stories, starting with my own. Now, if you're a young male and you think back to your time in high school, or if you're in high school or middle school now, you know that you feel like a fight is a very real possibility. You've probably watched a few of them break out. You've probably been threatened multiple times. You've had people challenge you to fights. So it's something you feel like could happen at any time while you're in school. And it's funny because when I was in middle and high school, I felt like one of the primary reasons I was doing this training was to be able to fight more effectively if I were to be attacked. And as I got out of school and the years went by, I started caring less and less about that, and I realized that I don't really need to know how to fight as much in the real world. The threat of violence is so much lower than when you're in school. So anyway, when I used my martial arts training, I didn't get into a fight. It wasn't a very serious situation. It wasn't like someone attacking me on the street or something like that. But I was in high school, and I had some people they were kind of picking on me and trying to pull me places. And I just used some of the very simple break, hold, or disentanglement techniques that we teach. So someone grabs your arm and pop out. Real simple methods. And they worked quite well because I didn't need to escalate the situation. I didn't need to punch or kick anybody. I simply was able to break away and then just kind of remove myself from that situation. So it got me out of what they were trying to do to me without using any more force than what was necessary. So it worked really good for me in that situation. Then I've had other students tell me of different things. Some people will give me a real vague idea of what happened, but a few stories I got. One was someone who was a manager at one of the big box stores, I think in Kalamazoo, and they have security there, and the security was trying to apprehend someone and working to wrestle them down, and he had learned a hammer lock from us, which is just that lock where you put someone's arm behind their back, and we used to use it in a lot of the one-step techniques. And he used that hammer lock to help apprehend and detain this guy along with the security. So that was one instance. Another one was a student who confronted some people who were throwing rocks at a building, and when he went and confronted them, there were two individuals. One of them threw a punch at him. And my student did a sidestep counterpunch, just like out of one of our drills. So he moved to the side and threw his punch, and he hit this guy right in the mouth, knocked him on the ground, and the other guy backed off right away then. And his only damages were a cut on his knuckles from hitting the guy on the teeth, which, by the way, if you're talking about real-world self-defense, there were probably better ways to have handled that situation, such as calling the police. If he confronted them, for example, and they both attacked him, it might have been much harder to use a technique like that. If they had a weapon, it would have been much harder for him to use violence and be victorious, right? And let's say the guy had a disease, and when he cut his knuckles, he contracted that disease, and that wouldn't have been worth it to stop them from throwing some rocks, right? So if we're talking real-world self-defense, that might not have been the best approach, but he did use the violent side of martial arts to achieve his objective in that case. So there you go, real-world setting. And then I had one other report. I don't have a ton of details on this one. This goes into a little bit more of the vague category, but I know enough that I'll bring it up. I had a student who was shoved up against a wall, and this was a school situation again, and they used one of our just basic knee strikes, and that was enough to get the space they needed to get away. Then, one that wasn't actual violence but was used quite effectively was, the students attributed it to a heightened sense of awareness they had gained. And of all things in the training that we do, they attributed that heightened sense of awareness to the forms. And they said just that time that you're connected with yourself, that you're training and you're really aware of your space and what your body feels like, and that connectedness to the moment gave them a heightened sense of awareness that they've carried with them now throughout their lives. And they were visiting a country that would register on a lot of travel advisories as being a little bit more dangerous, and they were doing it as it's where their family had come from, so they were visiting basically their home country. And they had described to me multiple cases where someone would start to follow them, for example. They would hear the footsteps because they had that heightened sense of awareness. They would look around and then use there were 3 of them. They would use their numbers in a way that would deter the person, or they would remove themselves from the situation. But they said multiple times they were stalked or followed, or in one case there was some violence occurring that they removed themselves from, or at least that's what they were thinking was going on. So multiple times where they attributed having heightened awareness helping them avoid some potentially really rough situations. So not directly using violence in that case, but using the sense of surrounding that you hopefully gain from your martial arts training. So while it's not, its core concepts are not geared exclusively for self-defense, therefore it's really not like the best way to build self-defense skills, it can be a side effect, and it's certainly much better than nothing at all. And those make for some stories that people usually like to hear. So hopefully you enjoyed hearing about those instances.